Well, when someone asks, did God cause Hurricane Katrina? I mean, of course, God is in control of everything, including the weather. We know from the New Testament that there was Jesus Christ was on a boat with his disciples, and he was sleeping in the hold of the ship, and his disciples woke him because there was a huge storm, and they said, "Lord, why are you sleeping? Why are you not worried? The storm is raging." And Jesus Christ commanded the storm and the seas and calmed the seas. So of course, God is God of the weather. So when there's a disaster such as Katrina, we have to look at it in a larger sense. I mean, certainly God could have intervened to stop that, but we should also consider the fact that perhaps there are cases where we as a civilization are building large centers of large cities in areas where they are not stable. And perhaps what we need to do as a civilization is be more careful not to build in areas where there is subject to be flooding and hurricanes. And I mean, New Orleans is a good example. I mean, we all know that a large part of New Orleans is physically below sea level. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So this is a horrible disaster. Okay. But at the same time, if we as intelligent human beings build in such a way that we basically mock the forces of nature, I think we have to expect that there will be disasters.
Well, I mean, that sounds like you're weaving in and out of, if you're going to build in a fishbowl like they did in New Orleans, then you're going to get drowned in there. So I don't know about that. What do you know about HAARP and its effect on weather? Have you done any study on that, HAARP?
No, I don't know. I don't know anything about that.
Okay.
Tell me about it.
Well, it's some sort of
weather modification?
Well, I don't know if you call it I don't know, electromechanical device. It's sort of like an antenna array that can be calibrated to alter the weather. I don't know what you would call the apparatus. I think it's an antenna array of some sort, but it is designed to affect the weather. But let me go back a little bit further, what you just said earlier. In the first hour, or maybe you said it at the beginning, at the top of this hour, that you don't advocate violence, but I guess being a Canadian, you may have never heard that that in the United States Constitution, it says where the people have a right to throw off such government, when it becomes overburdenous. That sounds to me like some gun toting there and some fighting back against the government. And the other thing you said that we sort more or less, and you said quoted Jesus on that we should render under Caesar unless it violates some sort of law. But wouldn't you say that the whole United States war in Iraq, which is funded by the taxpayers, means that we shouldn't pay taxes for those of us that don't believe we should have went to war?
It's a very valid point. However, if we look at the situation truthfully and we ask ourselves as Canadians or Americans, we claim we elect into power. We claim that we elect into power a government which is to represent us. And then by law we're compelled to obey the laws of that government. And as I said before, we should do so unless they contravene the law of God. So a person, I believe, can find a multitude of reasons why they should not pay taxes. The best reason is probably that it'd be nice to have more money to spend instead of giving it to the government, right? But at the same time, I think we have to realize that if you follow that line of reasoning, where does it end? What's the next law you're now going to not obey because you can find some just reason not to? Will you perhaps rob a bank because you believe that you can put that money to better use than that bank is using it? Maybe you'll rob a bank and you'll justify it by saying you'll use that money to feed starving children. I mean, where does it end? Mm-hmm. So I don't believe we can be lawless and find excuses for it. I just don't believe that's the Christian way.
Mm-hmm. Are there any examples in the Bible where Christians, so to speak, fought back physically?
Well, many Bible students may be familiar with the Maccabees. I'm not. There have been cases where, of course, there have been cases where Christians fought back. However, what we should realize is that sometimes to be a Christian, it's harder. It's a greater test of one's faith to not fight than to fight. It's tempting to take the the so-called violent or rebellious course. But if one believes in their heart that they're going to do what's expected of them by God, no matter what, then doesn't it maybe take more courage to follow what's in the Bible? I mean, yes, a person can always find a reason why they should take up arms, perhaps. Mm-hmm. But I would suggest that in many cases it takes even greater courage to put one's faith in God. And if you believe the Bible is telling you that you're supposed to live your life by example, and the Christian example is you're supposed to set an example of a godly lifestyle that doesn't include violence, I don't think there's anything wrong with owning a gun if the law permits you to own a gun. Mm-hmm. But I don't think a Christian should ever take up arms against the government, because I don't believe that the New Testament gives us any leave to do so.
Well, what if that government orders you to go fight in an unjust war?
Well, now that's an excellent example. I think that would be a difficult decision if you were drafted into an army. And I mean, there are examples of this in the Vietnam War, where many Americans came to Canada. They were the so-called draft dodgers. I personally met people who fled the Vietnam War and came to Canada for that reason. And that's an excellent point. And I believe, honestly, that's a decision that every individual would have to make. Would have to make prayerfully. They would have to search their own heart and try to determine what is their role in this. Mm-hmm. Is their calling to be a soldier? If your calling is to be a soldier, and if you believe that's your calling in life, to be a soldier and to be a good soldier and to obey that command, then I believe you'd have to do that. On the other hand, if you felt clearly in your heart that that was something wrong and you were not supposed to do that, you won't be able to find a scripture in the Bible, old or new, which specifically says if your government of your nation orders you to go to war, you must go. You won't find a scripture in the Bible that makes it that clear. Mm-hmm. And you know, for many of the difficult choices we make in life, we're not going to find an easy black and white answer like that. And I believe that's where faith comes in. That's where we have to learn to live a life of prayer, and we have to seek God's will in our own lives, because we don't all have the same role to play in this world.
Yeah. And for those of you just joining us, we are talking with Mike Lucas, and he is the author of the book, Satan's Government, a book about the largest conspiracy of all time, a conspiracy to ruin the human race. Now, that is a pretty large statement. And what would a ruined human race look like when the deed is done, when the job is complete by Mr. Satan, Mr. Beelzebub? When that job's done, what is the human race going to look like?
A ruined human race would essentially be a civilization which has completely lost its way spiritually, which has lost sight of its Creator, which has lost sight of its religion and its obligation to its Creator to obey God, and which has become essentially an irreligious society with no religion, a completely materialistic society, actually fairly close to what we see in the world today, unfortunately.
All right. Well, I would say for some, they wouldn't say that's all that bad of a deal. You mentioned religion several times. Is that religion that the earth loses its religion? Are you really saying the Christian religion, or are you saying all religions?
Well, that again is a very good question. Religion, to me, is the religion of Christianity, or the one true God. Now, we all know that there are many religions in the world, such as Buddhism. Okay, now I am obviously a Christian. I believe in the one true God, and so when I talk about religion, I'm of course speaking about my religion. I'm not speaking about Buddhism or any other kind of religion. But I would like to point out that there are other religions that don't call themselves Christian, which also worship one true God. And an example would be the Muslim religion. The Islamic people worship one God, the one true God. So we have to be a little careful, I believe, as Christians. If we have to realize that